Hmm, what happened? Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Aliens and Angels podcast. Please note all content, except for some thumbnail and background art, is completely authentically human generated and includes absolutely no AI generated components. We are the real deal, real people having real conversations. I am very honored to bring on a brand new guest today, Brian Tseng, and today we'll be discussing the current state of the full disclosure movement to achieve our Star Trek future. Brian Tseng is the SolarBee who co-organized the 2023 Montauk Adventure Tour to assemble survivors of the Montauk Project for the 80th anniversary of the related Philadelphia experiment and publicize their experiences. He's a regular contributor on the Awake Nation and Agent 12, I don't know, Agent X11 podcast with David Zublik and Penny L.A. Shepherd, as well as being a regular on Jessica, the Cryptid Huntress's show, and the Typical Skeptic podcast with my good friend Robert Khalil, along with guest appearances on many other shows in any way related to full disclosure. His mission is to rally and organize the worldwide disclosure of secret space programs, military abduction programs known as MilAbs, the reality of ET contact, super soldier projects, and the like as a first step to bringing about our collective Star Trek future. Brian is the executive producer for the Full Disclosure Now conference series of international presenters on St. Pete Beach in Florida, July 2024, 2025, and an upcoming 2026. He is busy working with his executive team to produce, build out, and launch the Full Disclosure Network, app, and cryptocurrency, given the huge success of the conferences and the need to better organize the full disclosure movement with an ever growing and amazing community of friends and fellow starseeds. All of the links are featured below in the description. I want to thank you all in advance for liking, commenting, subscribing, and please do share my content with your friends. And I'm very happy to announce that YouTube and Rumble channel memberships are available so you can receive my books and help to support my channel. So without further ado, I'm very honored to bring on our guest today. Here he is. Brian, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Karen. It's a pleasure to be here. I especially love being on shows for the first time, as this is a real treat for me today. And thank you, everyone, for joining us out there.
Yeah, you've got a big fan build up already in the live chat, and I've heard so many good things about you through mutual friends and everything. But since it's the first time on the show, would you like to tell everybody how you got started in all of this? Because it's a big subject, it's a big phenomena. I myself see many aspects of the phenomena as all being part of one phenomena. What's your take on it, Brian? And how did you get started in all of this?
Yeah, I've been kind of very interested in change and positive change in the world since I was a very young boy, growing up as a Chinese American, first generation. Um, of the eldest of three sons. My mother and father, came over from China to Taiwan to New York City, China to Hong Kong to New York City. That's where they met. Um, I'm kind of a rags to riches family background in that my father started his company, Tseng Labs, out of our basement in the suburbs of Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and back in the 80s, and he revolutionized the computer graphics field. And a lot of his innovations in electronics architecture are still used today, not just on the computer graphics side, but also on the CPU motherboard side of things with overclocking and things like that. And so, with the the prosperity of my father and my mother, I was able to go to kind of an elite private boarding school just about half an hour down the road from me, the Lawrenceville School. And then I got to go to Australia um, as a gift from graduating high school from them. And then I got to go to Occidental College in Los Angeles to get my biochemistry degree. And all along, everywhere up to then, it was always a battle of me trying to figure out how the world works, coming from a first generation Chinese American immigrant family to um, just seeing all the injustices. And I think, like a lot of us, I call myself a star seed. We're a second wave Dolores Cannon type volunteer to make a difference here.
Mhm.
You kind of get lost into the illusion for a while, but you still nothing. It just doesn't feel quite right. There's so many injustices. We know we can do better.
Mhm.
And I wanted, with my biochemistry degree from Occidental College in class of 98 with a minor in economics, I thought I'd, do things like genetically engineer slime mold to clean up oil spills. That's what I wanted to
Mhm.
do. And I quickly learned in the biotech biochemistry field that they want to study the next drug for shaky leg syndrome. No kidding. And money making drugs that don't really benefit humanity, but they make people a lot of money. And sometimes they have nasty side effects, but who cares, because so much money is to be made.
Mhm.
And instead, I became a volunteer organizer advocate with a group called the Physicians Organizing Committee, private membership association organizing primarily medical doctors to fight medical denials and to deal with corporate and government healthcare policies that allow nonprofit corporations to just gobble up hospitals, shut down the psych wards, the neonatal intensive care units, dump the poor people onto the county. The county, they give, in the state, in the feds, they give the tax breaks to the private nonprofits, and then they cry about not having any money to treat all the poor people and mentally ill who've been dumped on the streets to fend for themselves. And then they say,
Mhm.
what can we do about it? And out of that, I did 8 years hardcore organizing and advocacy, stopping hospitals from being shut down by threatening the nonprofit statuses of nonprofit hospital chains that were not doing their charitable work, anything but. They were undermining charitable care. And after that, I kind of got burnt out a bit after 8 years. I stayed on, and helped a bit for another couple of years. But then I went into solar and selling electric cars for a while with Tesla, and just to check it out. And I thought that might be a way to help out and make some cash for myself, support myself. Um, and then I discovered the full disclosure movement. And so this is what our viewers are really interested in. This is the movement to achieve our collective Star Trek future and liberate humanity and Earth from the Anunnaki reptilian overlords, the negative ones, and their Khazarian mafia, Illuminati cabal puppets amongst the humans, the sellouts, and the bloodlines to dominate humanity. We need to liberate from that, and then from there get to decide if we want to be part of the Galactic Federation or friendly with it, or we want to be isolationist, but we need to make those decisions on our own sovereign terms and basis.
Mhm. Mhm. That's very interesting, Brian. I myself I consider myself part of the first wave of people who woke up here. And I'm sure you can relate to this. It made my life really difficult because with eyes open, and I couldn't understand why everybody was pretending to live in a world that wasn't real. In the mid 1990s, I became very involved as an anti poverty activist. And from that lens, I also saw so many things that were wrong with this world. I'm in Canada, but we have no shortage of issues here either. So I started an anti-poverty group, and that didn't go so well because all I had was a bunch of poor people coming and wanting answers, and I didn't have them. So I changed it to a social justice anti-poverty group. And as you mentioned in your history, similar to mine, boy, by the end of the 90s, I was burnt right out. But because of that work, I knew about the G7 and the WEF and what their plan was long term in the future. And that blew my mind. I couldn't psychologically deal with just accepting that. And then, of course, I had the very good fortune of becoming in the early 2011 to 2014, I ended up exploding in these psychic and paranormal gifts, which led me to angelic contact, which led me to ET contact, which led me to writing my book. Now, I don't want to make this all about me because I really want to hear what you have to say, but I'm just telling you that I've been at this for a long time. I'm almost 70. Wow. I would say the biggest part of my job is self-care, taking care of my health so that I can keep doing this. And I know that you're a big fan of taking care of yourself too, so that you can be there, for the population. But before I go on and on too much, and I do want to cover your conferences because they're so important, but I'm wondering if in between, I have not had a guest on the show before who could really talk to the secret space program or the MilAbs military
Oh,
abduction
okay. No, this
program.
is great. I can
So,
speak to that.
so yeah, so I'm wondering if you would mind spending some time getting into those two subjects for my listeners and viewers and my audience who aren't really familiar. That would include me. I'm not really familiar, and I
Absolutely.
really
Absolutely,
would
Karen.
love to know more. So please do.
Okay, so I'm going to give it in a nutshell and also note that, I'm 50 years old. The AARP also already sent me their invite to join, and like makes me feel old, but I don't feel it that way. In terms of secret space program, it's really about how many people know about during the lead up to World War II in Germany, as the Nazis were rising to power. You also had a group of women led by a very powerful and beautiful psychic named Maria Orsic, who was head of the Vril Damen, the
Mhm.
Vril women. And Vril, not to be confused with Donald Marshall and the parasitic Vril, who they send a parasite into your eye. It's more of something known as the Vril life force. And apparently, Maria Orsic and her cohort of women were getting telepathic messages, downloads, communication from ETs who were claiming to be from the Aldebaran star system. Some people say they were more neutral or negatively oriented Pleiadian ETs who were in the Aldebaran system. Who knows? But needless to say, they were giving Maria Orsic and her group of women things like diagrams and schematics for how to make Die Glocken, what turned into Hitler's bell, and also the Hanabu. Those are the flying UFOs, but with like the Panzer turrets and the Iron Cross, black logo on them. And they basically this led to the Germans under the Nazi regime and something known as their Black Sun Society. They were doing like occult trips all over the world to try to find entrances to inner Earth and to Tibet to like get to Agartha and Shambhala and places like that, find the Spear of Destiny. Well, they were also utilizing this technology to figure out how to go into space. And this was where by the end of what we officially know as World War II, with 1945, the defeat of the Japanese after the defeat of the Germans, um, supposedly the Allies, the U.S., Soviet Union, UK, and the French and the others, we won World War II. But the reality is that the Germans, even though towards the end of World War II, they didn't have the time to gear up production of the Hitler's Bells or the Haunebu, the flying saucers with Panzer turrets, in time to turn the tide of World War II on the surface. What happened is they fled to Latin America and Antarctica. They set up a base there in something known as New Schwabenland. I think it's base 217. I forget the exact number. And they began to tool up production there. And with that, the United States sent Operation High Jump, led by Admiral Byrd in, I think, 1947. You got to understand, the United States sailors and Navy and everybody, they're all exhausted by the end of World War II. Why would you send a naval carrier fleet on a scientific expedition to Antarctica, of all places? Like, that's a real priority. Well, the Farsight Institute, our good friends there, led by Dr. Courtney Brown and a Yemi Genet is a personal friend, along with Inti Sam and Kamaya and others there. They've remote viewed this and they've corroborated on a blind scientific remote viewing basis, by the way. And they've corroborated the testimony of others who, in secret reports that have been leaked, talk about how the naval carrier fleet led by Admiral Byrd was sliced to ribbons by UFOs that rose out of the water and stopped them from reaching their destination in Antarctica to check out this supposed Nazi space base in Antarctica. And then what happened is you had the subsequent flyovers of Washington, D.C. of UFOs. There are photos to be found online on this. And so I've got a dog here begging for food. Bear. Treats rather. And they were flying over Washington, D.C. In Luftwaffe aerial formations. And apparently there are reports also of them storming Congress, taking over and forcing an official surrender. And so basically, Arkeem Ra and others, who's a Montauk survivor and part of these secret space programs, which I'll get more into, he talks about how the Nazi Germans, the space Germans by that point, they literally won World War II. We've been under the Fourth Reich ever since. And they've had all this time utilizing not only ET space technology given to them, they've also been using time travel. And they've been utilizing children from all over the world, including many children from all over the United States and Canada, who they've discovered to be gifted psychically, psionically, because many of us have certain DNA, starseed DNA, certain gifts locked into it. And they want to exploit that. And they send a lot of people into space and through portals using time travel. And they've done a lot of things to mess with their timeline. This is where we get the Mandela effects from. Mm-hmm. And they have their own breakaway civilizations out in space. First, the Germans. Second, the Japanese, who are their closest allies during World War II. And then third would be probably what's known as ICC, Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate. These are the private corporations that have sucked up a lot of this technology and went rogue private corporateering on their own, separate from the Germans and the Japanese who were initially hiring them, and the United States, who would then would probably be the fourth breakaway civilization, and then everyone else.
Can I just interject for a second and just compare notes? And because it's a lot of really good information, I
Hmm.
may have to go back and watch the replay myself.
Hmm.
But from the research that I have done and the evidence that I've seen and the intel I get from my spirit guides, I believe you're right on the money. And what really shows that today is if you go back in time, I also have seen the evidence that it was actually the Nazis who won World War II. But because that would be so unpopular, they covered it up as a big American win, a global win. Then they imported all the scientists and all the researchers and all the highest level people. And by the way, a lot of these people have committed horrific crimes against humanity, all brought in to the US. Now, all of a sudden, going back a couple of years, 2020 to 2022, and that whole medical fiasco. Well, all those big pharmaceutical companies are owned by or were started by former Nazis. And and so I see so much evidence. Of course, we cannot talk about this in polite society or in everyday society because people will basically freak out on you. They can't handle knowing that side of it. But I've seen tons of evidence, and what used to be available on even YouTube, were actual footage of the Nazi flying saucers, of the Del Glock in motion. All of this has already been. So those of us who are a bit older, we've seen the evidence. We know what's true. We know
Before
what's
the
real.
AI, before all the AI,
Yeah.
then CGI, sure, but it's definitely before the AI.
Oh, even some of it, I think, is even before CG. But I don't want to interrupt you
Hmm.
too long. I just wanted to tell you that I corroborate with what you're saying. And I wanted to sort of let the listeners and viewers see that we both have come to the same conclusions. And then please do continue, because this leads into, I believe, the secret space program, the Montauk project, the everything all spiraled out of that. Am I right, or have I missed
Abs-
the boat, Brian?
Absolutely. In fact, I'm going to share my screen and, you know, uh, just to give visuals here. Um, Going to Google Maps, what happened was, well, first you had the Philadelphia experiment, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was in 1943, the U.S. Navy, working first with Tesla and other scientists, I forget, like Dr. John von Neumann and others, they wanted to play catch up with the Nazis because they'd gotten word or evidence from some amazing, courageous spies, very sneaked out some photographs, like mini microfiche photos of like the UFO and the Die Glocken type stuff being built there in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
they put in 1943, they did like three times apparently. They took the USS Eldridge, and it's a destroyer class naval ship, and they took a Tesla generator and put one at each end, fore and aft. Where I think I'm getting it right, and one at the front and back, and then fired it up. And on one of the experiments, they literally not only achieved what they claimed they wanted to achieve, radar invisibility, they actually phased the ship and all the sailors on it out of time and space, and they tore a hole. It's actually very bad. Not only that, um, they uh, for the sailors on board, some of them they suffered horrific effects because while they were shifted in time and space, they were able to kind of like, it's like if you were astrally projecting, you could go through walls. Well, they were kind of like merged with the hull of the ship in various ways and tripping out on that, you know. And then when they came out back into our normal default reality, some of them were stuck in the ship. And I'm told by people who in the know that this photo that I've got here on the screen with this sailor, this guy like coming out of a hull of a wall
Mm-hmm.
here, that's a sailor on the USS Eldridge. And then here's another one just like frozen, stuck. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this very painful, horrible way to die.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And a bunch of the others were shipped off to mental uh, kind of retirement homes and places all over, for the rest of their lives after being experimented on. And many went crazy and died and just were, swept under the carpet of history.
Mm-hmm.
But the Navy and the U.S. government, unfortunately led by a cabal, we've never had a real U.S. government even before the Nazis taken over, really. Um, they they wanted to keep this all under wraps, and this is where they were still to some extent, on the one hand you got the Navy trying its own experiments to do catch up, but on the other hand the US, because the Nazis won World War II at that point, we're still under them. Okay, but you got different levels, I guess, of autonomy. Sorry, I want to go to Google Maps. There you go. And the elements that could, they took this experiment from Brookhaven from the Philadelphia experiment in 1943, saying, wow, there's something to this, to Brookhaven National Laboratory. Okay. And if you look at where it's right there in the center of Long Island, New York, right? So all the eggheads, the scientists, and the mucky mucks and military people could come from downtown, the city of Manhattan, New York, you know, over here to Brookhaven National Lab, where, yeah, it's got like these accelerator particle rings here. So if anyone here has ever watched Stranger Things, the TV
Mm-hmm.
show, this is basically Hawking's laboratory. And they even reference how I think Hawkins it's like a private contractor with links to the Department of Energy. Okay, and of course, the United States Department of Energy, it's all part of this, where they're like linked up with CERN, trying to tear holes in time and space, and unfortunately, it's not for good reasons. And
Yeah.
so they're experimenting on sailors and then children here at Brookhaven National Laboratory, and they eventually moved out to closer to Montauk Point rather, the east end of Long Island, the southeast end, the tail of the fish. A lot of people say Long Island is like a fish, with this east end being the tail, and this is being
Mm-hmm.
the South Fork. And out here you have Camp Hero Air Force Base. Okay, and underneath the Air Force Base there, Camp Hero Air Force Base, you've got this famous SAGE radar tower. Okay, and the SAGE radar tower, it's iconic. I'll pull it up a picture on my screen. But also under here, you've got underground bunkers. There's basically
Mm-hmm.
underground tunnels and underground base there, right? So in what we do, deep underground military bases figure very prominently. And you have the SAGE radar tower, and as part of playing catch up to the Nazis and Japanese who are already out in space and doing time travel, the U.S. military, they began to experiment um, here on children. They at this Air Force base, they basically um, had the SAGE radar tower, and they would do experiments that many people today are familiar with 5G and wireless and cell technology as a weapon. Well, a lot of that was pioneered at places like Montauk with the SAGE radar tower, where apparently they would experiment with beaming frequencies, not only at people in the surrounding base, but at people in the surrounding civilians in the surrounding area, to see how frequencies would affect them, make you sleepy or violent. And they show technology like this being used in the Kingsman movies, where like they play a tone over the cell phones and people freak out and become ultra violent. Okay. Um, and so uh, another thing they did is they took something known as the Montauk Trip Chair. And the Montauk Trip Chair, I don't know if there will be any images on it. Well, this is kind of like a stylized imagery. People compare it to a dentist chair.
Mhm.
Okay, but like a futuristic dentist chair that they would strap the children into, and then they would give them drugs, play music, beam light into their eyes. They would have a projector overhead projecting onto the wall in front of them underneath that Sage radar tower. They have the underground area there in one of the rooms. And they would
Mhm.
have the children open up portals, okay, in time and space. And so this is very Hollywoodized and whitewashed in the TV show Stranger Things, where they kind of make it like, oh, they're just opening up a doorway to the upside down. Okay, it's an alternate
Mhm.
dimension, but just because they want to experiment. Okay, the reality is that with what's the military code names, apparently Operation Rainbow Bridge and Operation Phoenix or Project Phoenix, among others, is the way Arkeem Ra, he's one of the survivors of this, of the project, along with John Whitberg and many others I can name. Susan Long, Veronica Bartolini, Anthony Zender, Alyssa Zender, um, Sean Bond, Audrey um, Walters, I mean, I can pull up a list of people with John Whitberg's permission. He said I can share this list. We're gonna go more public with it and post it to share with everyone for to peruse at their leisure. Um, but Arkeem, he kind of calls it Montauk 1.0. It's basically
Mhm.
strapping children into chairs like guinea pigs and figuring out who could survive the intensity of trying to open up portals in time and space. And apparently, many children died doing this. Why
Mhm.
children? They found out that adults didn't have the psychic ability for whatever reason. They didn't find any adults that could do it, and most children couldn't either. They died too, but they found a few who could. And then that's where
Mhm.
they were doing things like the talented and gifted programs or gifted and talented programs, the gate and tag programs, where a lot of children, I remember being called down to the basement of my grade school, putting on these headphones and having a nurse stand behind me or off to my side while I had my eyes closed. And apparently they would play tones, and I was supposed to raise my hand if I heard a tone playing. And now that I think about it, they were probably finding people who are psychic who they didn't really hit the button or a tone really didn't play, but they hit the button and you raise your finger even though you didn't hear anything, but they're like, okay, we got one. And
Mhm.
so people like
Yeah.
Arkeem, he
So
remembers,
that's how they
yeah,
recruited them,
that's one way.
found them, and
That's
then
one
yeah.
way. Yes. Are there other ways? People from bloodline families, people in the military, they got different ways got dragged into this.
Mhm.
Where it'd be like more like the children of people in the military. A lot of them
Yes.
got stuck into it. Children of Freemasons, people in secret societies and cult members, or certain religious groups. Their children got dragged into it. Um, let's see, and then uh, people from Canada. Chris Leterrier, he's a French Canadian. He has memories of him and a couple other kids, like one or two, being limousined down or chauffeured down in like a Cadillac or a Buick or an Oldsmobile from the Canadian side across Niagara Falls, the border there, down to New York to Long Island to Montauk, and then he has some horrific testimony, along with Chastity Campbell and Christy Campbell and so many others being locked up in cages as children, seeing
Mhm.
other children die, being drained, having their bodies drained of blood, being satanically ritually abused to be MK Ultra mind controlled so that they could install programmed altars, some of these very psychic altars at very
Mhm.
intense levels of concentration, stick them in the chair, and then say, hey, let's see if you can open up a portal and let's go see um, Abraham Lincoln at the Gettysburg Address, right? They
Mm-hmm.
didn't probably use the Montauk Trip Chair to do that, but Andrew Basiago, he testifies to being something known as Project Pegasus and
Yes.
going back to see the Gettysburg Address and going to
Mm-hmm.
see the crucifixion of Christ several times.
Mm-hmm. And there's evidence. There's actual evidence, photographic evidence, and other sort of obscure points as well. So, oh my gosh, that is a lot. So far we've covered the Nazis and their technology and Montauk, and now I'm guessing that leads directly into the secret space program. And do you want to
Yeah,
segue a little
yeah.
bit into
So
that?
so there's a gentleman who wrote the book Selected by Extraterrestrials, William Tompkins, and he talks out as part of the U.S. military catching up to the Germans and Japanese in space, who'd already gone from uh, basically Antarctica, right, to the moon and Mars and places like the moons of various planets around us,
Mhm,
like Mars of Jupiter, the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, places like a Ceres colony, which is called out by Tony Rodriguez, good friend in our community. And William Tompkins, he was recruited as a young boy into the military because he was a prodigy. He had a
mhm,
photographic memory. He could do models, 3D models by memory, and he became a ship designer for the U.S. secret space programs. And he talks about how the U.S. Air Force, they ended up with time travel. Okay, and the Navy ended up with the secret space program. The reason why is they reasoned that when you had people going off into deep space on ships for a long, long time, what kind of mindset do you want for that? Well, if you're an Air Force, commander or admiral, general, I don't know what it is. You're used to being stationed at your Air Force base, and yeah, your pilots they go on their missions, and then they come back to base. But when you're a naval captain of a ship and you're at sea, your ship
mhm,
is your home. And when you're in space, which kind of thinking is more suitable? The Navy. So the Navy got
mhm,
secret space program. Air Force, unfortunately, apparently got more also MK Ultra mind control. Not that the Navy doesn't have that and do that as well, but it was more pioneering with that with the Air Force. The Air Force apparently is a lot more infiltrated with black goo and Satanists, the Luciferians, as I call them.
mhm,
And so, just people, should know that. It makes me sad. I always want to become a pilot. So if you had asked me as a child, oh, I want to go to the Air Force, I want to be a pilot. But knowing what I know now, oh no, no, go into the secret space program and hopefully fly ships for our side to guard Earth. Um,
mhm,
but unfortunately, we're still liberating ourselves because although nominally the Germans and Japanese won World War II, and yeah, they've got the secret space programs that are far ahead of ours. They're even them, they're under the negative Draco and Anunnaki overlords.
mhm,
And that's why a lot of people who testify about being in the German secret space programs, something known as the Dark Fleet or Nachtwaffen, they'll talk about how even though you'll have a German Nazi full dress uniform captain of the ship, a lot of times there will be at least one Draco reptilian on board who whatever they say goes. And that's because, it's kind of like the Romans, how they would conscript those peoples that they took over and colonized. Well,
mhm.
the Romans didn't create that. That was a draconian thing before it was cool here on Earth. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And to build out the secret space programs. The Germans, they had access to time travel first using things like Hitler's Bell or Die Glocken. And people in our
Mhm.
community, like Penny Bradley, she's like the grandma bear of the secret space program community. She's a god grandmother to my only daughter, my child. Um, she testifies how in the German secret space program, because she's bloodline lineage, and they also use CRISPR technology on her mother when she was still in the uterus in the womb of her mother, um, in like the 1950s, to
Mhm.
put in draconian DNA into Penny. Okay, which gives her certain gifts, but also gives her certain health issues to this day,
Mhm.
especially now as she's
Mhm.
getting older. And she talks about how um, the Germans, they would use her in their programs, among other things, go back in time. They would fly over the battlefields, like the ancient middle, the European battlefields, like the Viking type battlefields, and
Mhm.
they would fly down from their craft from the sky, fly down to the battlefield with like their helmets with like winged helmets on, like they were Valkyries, like they were doing
Mhm.
Valkyrie cosplay. Come to the battlefield, cut the heads off of the fallen warriors, then bring them back up to their ship in the sky, and then throw the
Wow.
heads into regeneration tanks. You regenerate the warriors, and you drop them off on another planet that you want to colonize. Okay. And you tell them that this is Valhalla. Here are fertile Viking women. Here's animals to husband. Uh, Farm the land, and raise lots of children. And we Viking gods will come back and check on you periodically. And what Arkim testifies to is that the reason why they would use time travel, and one reason why, in addition to being able to harvest, like Penny Bradley was made to do, hardy Viking people who could live on like planets that were not full of a lot of technological innovation and gadgetry, and they could just like live off the land and off the animals and cutting down trees and stuff. They would also travel back in time to take over planets, colonize them, that otherwise the native species on there would have become the preeminent life form as they should be on their own planet. And a way to violate or circumvent galactic law is by using time travel to go back in time to basically steal the destinies of these other beings. And so John Whitberg and Arkim Ra and others talk about a planet known as Corellia, renamed to Centauriana after it got taken over by the US secret space programs. I don't know if it was maybe the Germans as well, and Japanese. And the people there look like Admiral Akbar from the Star Wars series.
Mhm.
And
Which one was that? I forget. Sorry.
so I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
He's a guy who they always make fun of him for saying it's a trap. Admiral Akbar. So basically, these are supposed to be uh, amphibious people. They can live on land or in water, and they live in
Mhm.
on a swampy planet. And then because people have altars and soul fragments all over these programs put into clone avatar bodies, as shown in
Mhm.
the movie Avatar. But imagine having multiple avatars of you out there simultaneously. Okay. Arkim remembers having one of his altars grew up on this planet as a human, was really poor, got kicked out for some reason from the humans he was assigned to, um,
Mhm.
and got taken up by one of these Admiral Akbar type people, one of the natives of the planet, who they were just basically beaten down, colonized people. Think the Indians under the British,
Yes.
in the
Yes.
1950s or before that. Okay,
Yeah.
and he says he shared with me, and we did a show on this, on this Disclosure Now podcast on Arkeem Rod's show, how his his alter as a human boy basically ended up living with one of these Admiral Akbar people who took him in and owned his own restaurant, which was like a Karelian restaurant, which was like the food obviously tasted great to Karelians, but it was like, imagine like humans trying to eat swamp food on like
Yeah.
Dagobah. It would be like
Yeah.
nasty.
Yeah,
And
I had some
apparently,
experience with that. I know what that's like.
okay, well then apparently, um, Arkim, he remembers basically being taken in by this being who
Hmm.
became a father to him. He would like sweep and like clean up the restaurant and like learn how to cook the Karelian food, and then figured out how to ameliorate Karelian food with what the human palate. And so
Yeah,
they
I
had the
had a very,
first
sorry, go ahead.
restaurant on that planet, on that breakaway colony under the secret space programs, these colonized people, the first successful Karelian restaurant that did hybrid Karelian human fusion cuisine. And it became a
Wow.
hit. And it not only did it launch this whole thing, but it did a lot to improve human Karelian relations, because
Mhm.
until then, even after probably, but especially up until then, the humans were super racist to this colonized people on their own planet. And so, Arkimi, he literally cries. He feels so bad about that.
Hmm. Sorry for interrupting you earlier, Brian, but I just got all excited because in my experience with ETs, I'm aboard a big ship, but it's not any one race. It's all different kinds of races. And the food there basically grows all in the hallways and everywhere and in every room. And then you just pick what you're interested in. Then you go to the food stations. Anyway, I had all kinds of beings show me what the cuisine from their worlds was like. And it was interesting. It took me a couple of days to develop even the enzymes in my saliva to break some of it down. Some of it, my brain didn't even register at all. And it took a period of getting used to all that. But they didn't have a restaurant or anything like that. But I've been in that very place experiencing food from other cultures, other worlds, and very, very interesting. I get into that in my book, actually, in quite a bit of detail. But I'm not surprised. It kind of surprises me when I hear other um, experiences that are similar to mine, because mine's a little different. It's transdimensional rather than physical 3D being picked up and taken to a spaceship or a human
Or
project.
even
Anyway,
even even
I didn't
people who
mean to
are
interrupt.
but even people who are picked up in ships, sometimes they have to go from third density consciousness, where we are generally here now, to fourth,
Yeah,
fifth, higher density, get
yeah,
on those ships. And then I want to address something here. In our audience,
sure.
Shelley Michelle Morrison saying Corey Good isn't talking from true experience. He said from dreams, quote unquote, in his comment regarding copyright. It's hard to believe the 20 and back space program talk. So I want to address this.
Yeah, I'm
Corey
glad
Good
you are. I've wondered myself.
Corey Good is someone who's appeared on Gaia TV with David Wilcock and shot to fame with their Cosmic Disclosure series, where initially they were doing excellent work. And then what happened is they had a lot of fallouts at Gaia TV, and Corey then sued everybody. They got in this big, very public lawsuit, and then Corey Good sued claiming copyright infringement as if it was all his intellectual property. So
Mm,
first of all, people like Penny Bradley, they've been speaking about 20 and backs and time travel and Montauk way before Corey Good ever came onto the scene.
hmm.
So Corey Good, in claiming that he made it all up, he's done a lot of damage to the movement and the community and humanity. I'd say he set the full disclosure movement back about by 5 years. But
Hmm.
so many people have come out totally independently of Corey effing Good. Pardon my
Hmm.
French. Okay,
Oh no, it's all good.
to speak about 20 and backs, Tony Rodriguez, Rebecca Rose, Arkeem Ra, Chastity Campbell, Joseph Powell, James Rink, I mean, I could name it on and on. And Veronica Bartolini. Um, I could just keep going on. And so the the Farsight Institute, they've been blind remote viewed. Imagine taking 4 or 5 psychic remote viewers, not telling anyone and them anything, just saying, I've
Mhm.
written down a name and an envelope. This envelope is envelope 55. Okay, go, each of you do a 2-hour remote viewing session on whatever you pick up on what's envelope 55 is about.
Mhm.
And it was about Series Colony Cavalier, the testimony book that Tony Rodriguez wrote, and they have a whole 2-hour. I think it's not that long on their farsightprime.com on their platform, showing the remote viewers sharing their data, and then reviewing their sessions, and then the big reveal, and it's all spot on, accurate with what Tony Rodriguez reported. And then
Mhm.
what Tony has reported, many other people has come forward. So I hope that clarifies the whole Corey Good debacle.
Yeah, it certainly answers a lot for me. Now, Brian, I want to just take a moment to do a quick plug for my book. Then we'll come back and I really want to hear about your conferences. But I'm going to have you back because we didn't even get into the tip of the iceberg. So I'm hoping you will come back. But we'll just take a quick 1 minute break and then we'll be right back. Learn about the stunning details of ET diversity and culture, along with their advanced ways of living spiritually, which is in no way like anything imagined here on Earth. Transdimensional, Meet the New Neighbors, introduces you to many different looking ET beings, the organic healing pods, the self assembling interior of the big ship, my ET buddy and the orientation process, cultural events like concerts and the joining of ships, as well as off world physical and non physical loving practices. In my contact experience, I learned a great deal about ET origins, transdimensional travel, intergalactic planetary research, and the various options for resettlement. My goal is to introduce you to the look, culture, intention, and technology of beings which are different than humans, in order to reduce your fear and increase your familiarity so that you will remain more rational and grounded once the ET presence escalates beyond debate. Enjoy reading about my real life adventures and notice the things we have in common. So you will see that we are essentially many family lines within one species. Paperback and Kindle versions of Transdimensional Meet the New Neighbors is now available on Amazon worldwide. To gift yourself or someone you love, pick up your copies today. And we're back. I just like to tell people about my book because a lot of people have not heard experiences like mine. And mine is just, I can't explain why it's different. All I know is what I know and what I've experienced. But I really enjoyed getting the book out there, and quite a few people have really enjoyed reading it, which is really wonderful. So, Brian, let's we're quickly running out of time, but I want to hear more about the conference. So you did your first conference, I believe, in 2024. Then you had a very successful one. A friend of mine, Tilly Treadwell, was
Oh,
telling me
great.
that I think she presented at it. And you've got another one coming up next year. And we want to give people lots of notice because some folks have to save up for it, make plans. I don't even know if I'll be allowed in the United States by then because they're trying to push the digital ID here, which I personally
Hmm.
do not want to participate in. But please take it away and tell us all about this amazing conference. And I'd love to invite everybody out there in my audience. I think they'd love it.
Great. Basically, I've got this really amazing lineup of people from all over the world, many of whom I consider either the stalwarts of getting the word out and researching and organizing to people who are direct experiencers of these programs, and then like the psychics and the remote viewers who are also doing the work to advance the movement and get the information out there. Everyone from like Miles Johnston from the UK with a Basis Project, who's reporting on super soldiers since the days of Max Spears and James Casbolt first emerging on the scene, and also helping to get the word out about black goo. James Bartley came over from Australia to talk about military abductees and reptilians, in particular the negative reptilian agendas affecting us here on Earth. Lucas Alexander with the Age of Truth TV came over from the Netherlands. Yemi Genet from the Farsight Institute, who I've mentioned. Rion de Rouen and Tone Millard of TeamLight.com. Lauren Eisenhower, whose great grandfather was President Dwight Eisenhower. Jean-Charles Moyen, he's been in the French secret space programs as well as Project Pegasus, which we talked about Andrew Basiago earlier. Tom Althouse, in addition to being a starseed, he's the person that they stole the Matrix from. The movie series was stolen by Warner Brothers from Tom Althouse. He pitched them the script and showed them the choreographed kung fu fight scenes back in 1993. No, he wrote that in 1993. He pitched it to him in 96. He has a stamped copy and everything. And then in 1999, they came out with the movies. And then they're trying to muddy the water because there's another gal out there claiming she wrote the series. Maybe they got the download at the same time, but he's got the hard evidence, and I've seen it. Sean Bond and Ishar's League, they were the Psionic League, both very powerful psychics as well. Sean's an SSP experiencer. A lot of these people, they remember each other from the programs as well. I mentioned Penny Bradley, Drago Reed, Jessica Jones, a cryptid huntress, Sarah R. Adams, Samuel Chong. He basically helped translate the Thayuba prophecies.
Yes, I've had him on the show before. He's amazing.
Yeah.
And he's a super nice gentleman, too.
Yeah. Soma, she channels directly the Pleiadians. She's in constant contact with some of the positive Pleiadian Ashtar Command Galactic Federation types. Nathan, the Haljayan contactee, he's also has a lot of memories of the programs. Daniel and Derek, their grandfather was a UFO crash recovery specialist with the secret space programs here on Earth. And also, they unfortunately were abducted into the programs. Derek for like 8 years, and then Daniel for like 4 or maybe 6, slightly less than the older brother. Alondra Markman was in the programs. A lot of classical music was stolen from him, as is Christy Campbell. It's Susan Long. She's in the programs, Montauk Project as well. And the comic book character Phoenix from the Marvel comic series is apparently based on her.
Interesting.
And so, we had our conference. These are people over the last 2 years. And then there's even more than this probably, but who have been our guests. And it's 4 days and nights of 2 stages, presenters, and then also special event dinners each of the 4 nights. And then also we spend a lot of time hanging out on the beach and by the fire pit at night, which is my favorite time and amazing. And then that weekend, we have both years we've teamed up with our sister event, Day of Being. Now it's Weekend of Being. They're the full Saturday and Sundays, and we plan on doing so again this year, coming up 2026. We just have to lock in all the dates in July still.
Wonderful. Wow. Sounds like a complete intellectual and experiential feast for everybody. I'm so glad that you were on today and could tell everybody about it. And the links, everybody, are in the description below, regardless of what platform you might be watching the replay. Of course, you're here. Some of you are here live, and many of you will be listening to this on an audio podcast. So please do check out the description and see the links and find out how you could be involved for next year. And I'm really excited about everything. I'm very excited to have had you on the show today, Brian. Now, we didn't even, like I said, cover the tip of the iceberg. So I'm hoping you'll come back maybe before the year's end,
Oh,
and we'll
I'd love
spend
to
more
be.
time.
Yeah,
Oh, wonderful.
I'd love to come back and to answer Shelley's follow-up question. I do stand on Tony Rodriguez's testimony. In our community, the people who I've generally a higher confidence because I've had multiple people corroborate their testimonies, or we have scientific remote viewers like the Farsight Institute. I don't call them stories; they're testimonies. And so, and yes,
Absolutely.
I definitely would stand by Tony. I've met him in person. I'm personal friends with him, and a lot of people, the things he says in Series Colony Cavalier and other parts of it's more than just what he experienced in that one place. It lines up with everything everyone else has said, and then some. He's literally traveled to physical locations with people like Tyler Koala of Journey to Truth, and found physical evidence that yes, his memories are real. He's got sketches, and then it lines up with the real life places 30 years later.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Now, I want to give you a few minutes, Brian. Anything that you want to answer from the chat, or issues you didn't get a chance to cover, please, again, tell people where they can reach you. As I mentioned, the links are in the description, but some people will be listening on audio, and it'll stick more in their mind if they hear you say the URL or where's the best place to get a hold of you. Anything else that you want to share before we close out the program today would be very much appreciated.
Yeah, fulldisclosuremovement.org or fulldisclosure.network or fulldisclosure.live. We're taking over all the Full Disclosures website URLs that we can. Not only will there be upcoming information on the previous conferences, you can watch the recordings of the previous ones. We'll have information on the upcoming one as we get closer to 2026. And we'll also have information on the upcoming Full Disclosure Network platform that we're going to be launching, along with the Full Disclosure cryptocurrency and app to enrich the Full Disclosure movement, the participants with us, so that people can get out of the whole targeting and isolation and misery and into abundance and prosperity, happiness, peace, and joy. But also to just advance the movement as a whole so we can achieve our Star Trek future. So thank you everyone for being here with us, and I look forward to being back, Karen.
Oh, thank you so much, Brian. I want to thank again everyone who's joined us today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I really appreciate the effort people make to be in the live chat so that it enhances the program. So that's about it for today. I'll be back on Wednesday with the Quantum Guide Show, and I'm wishing you all much love and light and the very, very best. Thanks again, Brian, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining me for the Aliens and Angels podcast. Read about my true life ET contact in my book called Transdimensional Meet the New Neighbors, which is now available on Amazon worldwide. Subscribe to my YouTube, Rumble, and X channels at Karen Holton TV. The like button and leave me a comment, and please do share this podcast with your friends. Check out my website at www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com to see my free resources and amazing products and services. All of the links will be in the description below. As part of the Forbidden Knowledge Network, you'll also find the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton on all audio platforms. Until next time, keep up the good work.